this is the first of 3 meetings over the next 3 nights, with a view really to kind of talking to people and finding out what's going on locally around some of the core issues. So tonight it's welfare, tomorrow night it's housing, and then kind of giving a night over for people to kind of bring other issues to us as well, as what we've identified. So Thursday night is a kind of open house meeting really where we've talked about things like transport, social care, access, other things that are going on, health, community health in the borough, lots of other stuff. So the next 3 nights really is just about trying to talk about those issues, and then from each of those 3 nights to try to identify a few steps that we can start to take to kind of address some of the stuff that's going on. There has been a lot of stuff happening locally previously around campaigning in the borough, but I'd like to think that's probably one of 2 or 3 things that we can do. And tonight is about kind of identifying what those things are and the how, and then kind of where we go from here. And after the 3 nights together, we'll try and get everybody who has been present kind of onto the same email thread, summarize all those conversations, highlight what we agreed as next steps, and start to kind of pick up on the work that needs to be done to make those things happen. So that's kind of the reason that we're here tonight. If we want to just go around starting off, just do a quick go around and just everybody say their name so we all know who's in the room. Then I'll quickly go through the agenda. If people have anything else they want to add to that, or any kind of anything they want to say about how tonight should progress and kind of how people want to have the conversations, anything like that, any kind of not so much ground rules, but just making sure that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of how we're going to have this discussion. So yeah, I'm Andy, and I'm the manager at DAI. Sandy, we'll go your way.
I'm Sandy, I'm just a member of DAI.
Yep.
Gareth, I'm here supporting Andy as his peer.
I'm just Jackie Birtles.
I'm Becca Henderson. Oh gosh, I'm not very good at public speaking. My name is Emily. I'm from the newspaper called the Islington Tribune. Just wanted to gauge a little chat to Andy first of all, say hello, and also gauge what's going on with universal credit for people with disabilities in Islington.
My name's Asher. I'm on the management committee here for the past couple of months.
Oh, just to say, like, don't feel like I'm not recording. I'm not, just here for, I'm not going to quote you or anything without your permission. So please don't worry about that. And I'm not going to stay around for the whole thing. Just to say hello and stuff.
So is everybody comfortable with that? Firstly? Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of give a quick kind of summary of what's happening in Islington, the 2 biggest changes in terms of welfare change have been the move from DLA to PIP and the replacement of 6 benefits in one with universal credit, both of which are being rolled out in the borough, one from late last year, which was PIP, and one from earlier this year, which is universal credit. Universal credit has been delayed in the full term rollout. It has been delayed probably for about the 5th time since the first day it was set. So it's been beset with delays. In terms of PIP, that makes up kind of the core work of what we are doing at the minute in terms of information and advice. And what we're seeing is kind of 2 or 3 things around PIP that are consistent. One is the expectation around waiting times is absolutely nowhere near what the government kind of talks about. So the aspirational kind of waiting time is 14 weeks from phoning up for the form to getting your first payment or the end of that decision making period. The average is closer to about twice that in kind of most people's experience. It's taken about 6 months from start to finish to kind of complete that. The second kind of thing is that the whole process and how kind of just psychologically impacted people are right from knowing that the transition is going to happen. So people are kind of calling us up they're usually quite confused as to kind of what's going on, what the situation is with their DLA, what the process is around PIP, whether or not they kind of are eligible. So there's just a whole confusion added to the kind of the myths that are kind of out there, the worst case scenario stories, so all of these things kind of combined just give a really kind of a dark feeling about kind of entering into the process. And then the third thing is that just the kind of the sense of failure that people feel at every sense of the process. So whether that is through the assessment, the report, the interactions with the private companies, the contacting the DWP, kind of just everybody's feeling of kind of what's going on is just a sense of that people are under kind of the microscope, not the Microsoft, under the microscope, being scrutinized all the time, constantly having to be reassessed in a lot of cases after 6 months, a year, go through the whole process after they've just kind of completed it. Maybe they've just completed it a year ago, then spent 6 months doing ESA, then straight back into into DLA, or sorry, PIP again. So it's this kind of whole sense of repetitiveness, disjointedness, the kind of always having to prove that you're telling the truth, always having to kind of come up with evidence. And when you do, there's no dependency on either side. That information will be consistent. It'll reflect the form you filled in, the assessment you've just done, the evidence you've just given to support. None of this. So kind of people's whole kind of feeling around that whole system is one of dehumanization and demoralizing in the main, which is completely at odds with what the government is saying, which is that more people are getting more money, more people are expressing satisfaction with the process, it's quicker, it's more joined up, there is closer working together between decision makers and healthcare professionals, and all of these things which to somebody might be true somewhere, I don't know. But people's lived experience, and certainly what we are seeing here, is that it's disjointed, it's long, and that it's one set of failures after another, regardless of whether it's healthcare professionals, the DWP, ATOS, or whoever else is involved in the decision making. Up until I think people don't really feel a sense of anything right up until the appeal stage, which actually has a better kind of reputation than the whole process stage, because people feel confident, more confident by the time they get to appeal that they will actually get a fairer hearing at appeal. And I think that's probably because of the numbers that come back from appeal. So people who do know the system kind of feel that by the time they get to appeal, are probably more likely to get a better shot. And that's very few people, because most people don't really know the system at all. Universal credit is completely online. Prove your identity online. You have, and I know the government have been saying that they expect up to 20% of claims to be done offline by the end of it, and that they're trying to support people, and that the council have put in a couple of things to try and support people as well. However, in the main, most places are completely unprepared for universal credit.
The influx, yeah.
What's that?
I think a lot of people, a lot of organisations are totally unprepared for it just because it's going to be like it's tidal, way.
So the couple of things we know already is this. The first reports in around 2012 showed that about 4 in 10 people on the pilot schemes got into rent debt almost immediately within 3 months of moving on to universal credit. That was the second pilot and the first pilot reports. As it stands today, universal credit makes up 4% of rent accounts and 25% of rent debt already. So of all the rent debt in the country, universal credit is 25% of it, even though we're less than 5% of people pay their rent through universal credit. So that's a significant disproportionate impact already. So we have a higher than average number of disabled people in the borough. We have particularly high numbers of people on DLA, and particularly high numbers of people who present with a mental health diagnosis, which are one of the most underserved groups on DLA and PIP. and again, one of the most underserved people on universal credit in terms of being able to meet the job commitment, being able to carry out the amount of work, hours, and all of those kinds of things. So there are 2 out of 3 people using food banks are universal credit and or disabled claimants. So we're already seeing massive impacts. The council has started to do something. So they approached the housing panel last year with a checklist about a resource for people moving over onto universal credit, which was mostly to kind of help them identify services in advance and in the transition. To kind of one of the big problems has been that in the transition from ESA to universal credit, that transitioning the rent account takes longer than it should, and it's taking almost a year to get back to pre-transition levels. Yeah, so if you were okay ahead in your rent because you transition onto universal credit, that is a big problem with your housing benefit, your rent being paid. It's taken a year to redress that, get your rent back to the way it was before you had a claim. That's a big problem for councils, particularly a council like this, where huge amounts of people are on housing benefit. So they have started to kind of look at last year how they would do that. So they produced some information and some guidance around people who are transitioning onto universal credit, and that's on their website. It's not enough. Now the government, I think, announced a few quid yesterday to support councils, and I think City Can announced some money last week, didn't he, for supporting local councils around universal credit as well.
I think that was, something like that.
So there is some tiny bits of movement. A number that sticks in my head from about 2010 or 2011 was council predicted that by around 2016, between the council and claimants, there would be 50 million a year lost in the borough in terms of social security payments, with a crisis intervention fund of about 3 million. And that was the resident support scheme, the City Bridge Trust, all of those kind of bits and pieces combined. So we're looking at about 47 million gap year on year in the borough in terms of income that was here in 2010 and isn't here today. So that's huge. So kind of what do we do to kind of respond to that? The council has done what it can, the organisation can do what it can, but I think a huge part of this is about opening up a few more of these spaces around the borough. So I think personally, kind of making sure that we're not just doing this as a one-off here, but trying to kind of get into other places. This is where we're going. There doesn't seem from yesterday.
I'm sorry, I didn't know where it was here.
No worries. What a job.
You want to take some?
I can sit there if you want.
You all right? What's your name?
Melanie.
Melanie, nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm Andy.
Hi, Auntie.
We literally
Sorry,
just
I'm
started
not-
a few minutes ago, so I'll just quickly
Oh,
recap.
yeah, okay.
Do you want a cup of tea or something?
I'll make you one. If that's okay, just with milk, yeah.
Don't worry.
Whatever, you know. Warm me up a bit.
So I've just basically gone through pretty much how disruptive the 2 big changes have been in the borough, which is from disability living allowance to PIP, and then the movement of universal credit coming in during this summer, which it's been a slow start, but it will start to pick up over the next couple of years. We will see lots more people moving on to universal credit. The council has done a couple of little things. So they've got the income maximisation team, which works with local residents to support them through particular benefit claims. They produce some information and stuff like that. Does anybody know of anything else that the council are doing?
Do you know the other thing that is, I think is a bit of a problem is the ESA reassessment?
Yeah, they are a big problem.
Particularly for people who've got enduring mental health issues, because it's all about the stress of knowing it's coming. Then it's the stress of trying to sort it. Then there's the stress of actually getting to the place and having the assessment and knowing it's being done by the street sweeper, whatever, and somebody who doesn't know anything about mental health. And then, I know a few people who are kind of managing, but they won't carry on managing if that happens.
And this cycle of bouncing between DLA and PIP, because the average award is 2 years, you're kind of, there's no off year, so you're either doing one or the other. And sometimes people are doing both at the same time, or you're starting one and halfway through another, it happens all the time.
And it's just,
But what I understand from the universal credit is because I've been watching it quite closely on the on the internet.
Yeah.
Is that for people on what they call legacy benefits.
Yeah.
And they're migrating over to universal credit, and the circumstances haven't changed.
Yeah.
Although I don't know much about this, but there is a thing that's called transitional protection, which actually it said that whoever will supposedly top up your universal credit benefit, and so it's the same as you're getting now.
yeah.
So this was the promise, wasn't it? But disabled people are finding that that's not the case.
But also, it doesn't, the reason they did that was, it's like some other things a few years ago, they'll freeze it, and then when the other benefits go up, yours won't, until you get down to the same as everybody else. So it's not really transitional, it's just temporary, and I can't remember what they do that one a few years ago.
I don't know.
Remember.
I mean, all I know is that they top it up until your benefit, i.e. universal credit,
Yes.
you want, goes up to the same level.
Mind you, because they've frozen all the benefits, people aren't working. It doesn't matter, does it?
No.
Because it's getting worth less every week.
It isn't all doom and gloom though, so there has been some pushback.
Yeah, and as you said, the universal credit has been kind of delayed again.
Well, it's also been toxified. I think that it's been toxified in the same way as the work capability assessment was toxified a few years ago. I think that what's happened is now that it's a head of steam is built up in much the same way, and it's come from excuse me, it's come from so many different places now, from MPs, from advice agencies, from campaigns, from charities. I think there is a huge amount of kind of evidence out there now about how destructive it is. And I personally feel it's kind of on its last legs in terms of being a manageable or sellable kind of, policy.
I've kind of thought that for quite a while now.
Yeah. So how do we hasten its demise? So I kind of feel like, what we need to do here is it's on the edge of the cliff, and we kind of,
push it
we can push it off, definitely. So there is so there's 2 or 3 things that are going on. So the first thing is that there is kind of a big, there's been a big campaign by Deepak around universal credit, and they've tried to tie into the International Day of Disabled People coming up on the 3rd, and they've asked anybody who's doing anything around International Day to kind of include universal credit, and preparing some fact sheets and stuff like that we're sending around to people. So there will be that. There is some movement within the Labour Party to try and get some motions around. So the Labour leadership has been quite disjointed about the position of universal credit. Around the time of the conference, there were some mixed messages kind of coming out. That seems to have settled down a little bit, and the line seems to be that it's very close to the end. I think we need to kind of coordinate. There has been campaigns in Hackney, in Muswell Hill, and a couple of others, surrounding boroughs where local labour groups have been trying to pass motions around universal credit, but they've also been campaigning. They've been bringing out the Daily Mirror petition. They've been getting people to sign up to, if they're Labour members, to sign up to the motion to pass it around constituency. So that's another one of those things. In terms of PIP, one of the things that we've done here is we've got a dual recorder, a dual recording device, which is one of the old police station tape recorders, which you can take into a PIP assessment with you. Yeah.
So they won't let you use it.
No, so on ESA, they won't let you use it because it's not part of the contract. But on PIP, you can use it. Yeah. So I brought it into mine. You brought it into yours. Have you?
No.
Yeah.
Have we not had it recently that we've had the PIP ones? They don't allow you to bring your own recording. They record it
So
themselves.
we've had both sides.
Yes,
From
they
PIP.
say that you have to bring your own recording.
No. So ESA are saying they won't do it and they won't let you do it. Yeah. But PIP have said you can't. We've been told both things by PIP.
Yeah.
Both that you can't bring your own and they have to provide it, and that they don't have to provide it and you can bring your own. So we've been told both ends of it by PIP. But I've used it. We lent it out yesterday and it was used yesterday in a PIP assessment. Once you bring it with you, there's a notification on the website that tells you what you have to be able, what the recorder has to be able to do. So we got a recorder that fulfills that criteria, and it is essentially that you record 2 tapes at the same time, and that you're able to give 1 copy to the DWP when you leave. Yeah. So that is something that we can do in terms of just giving people an added level. It doesn't address huge amounts, but it does address kind of being able to go into an assessment and be confident that you can be sure that what you're telling that person is verifiable beyond what's being reported by the healthcare professional. Yeah, so that you can give an extra level of backup to that kind of assessment. So that one of the things we could do is kind of get that out a bit more. I don't know what networks you're involved in or any of those things, but if you've got any contacts with people who are going through assessments and want to do that.
Yeah, well, they've just told me I've got to have another assessment. I'm on the ESA and DLA.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about universal credit and PIP yet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think some of my friends probably do.
Yeah.
But
you're going through the process yourself.
We're still on the DLA, really. You know.
Okay.
But you know, I haven't really. I just asked them if I could not have any more assessments.
Yeah.
I said, you know, I don't want any more assessments. But they said, well, they've just saying, well, you will have to come and be assessed.
Yeah.
So.
Have you asked anybody for support in that process, or has anybody been kind of helping you?
Not yet, no. I mean, usually I kind of do it myself, but you know, I get someone to come with me, you know.
Yeah.
But it's awful because every time they, you know, they more or less say, oh, there's nothing wrong with you and you're fit to work, and you know, I mean, I sort of, you know, I've got dozens of things wrong with me.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do.
I
look well, I look young, but I'm, you know, I'm not really, you know.
What are the kinds of support like that you would want if you know if you had to go for the assessment tomorrow? What are the kinds of things that you'd want going into that assessment?
Well, I mean, the things they don't let you take anyone with you, do they?
To do, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah, you're fully entitled to take
Oh,
with you.
you can take someone with you, can you now?
Yeah.
You have to tell them I don't need all that.
I had 2 in mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if I don't know, but if you're severely disabled, I don't know how it works because I didn't. It just happened they did at home.
Say that again, Jackie, sorry.
home assessment.
You aren't entitled to home assessments. You
Yeah.
can't ask for a home assessment.
Yeah, and for me, I'm lucky because it works fine now, which is nothing, but I mean, I realise that for people, you know, different people, it's different
Yeah.
circumstances.
The first question I asked in kind of in the publicity for this meeting was how do we respond? So I think it's kind of, you know, there are a couple of things that we can tap into there. So that Universal Credit campaign that Deepak are running, the day of action around kind of including it in any of our events, contacting the Labour Party, those are kind of the core things that we can kind of begin to do and start to push that motion.
Yeah.
One of the things that has been spoken about there is kind of is supporting people through assessment. And if we have one of those recording, then that's a start. But I think a kind of main thing would be identifying people that would be willing to kind of support each other through different kind of assessments, and maybe reaching out and seeing if we can set up some sort of buddy system or something like that. You know,
That'd be a good idea.
you know, because it's one of the main things we do ask there that we can't do is can you come to an assessment?
Yeah. And also, it may be a good idea to get some list of organisations who can, you know, help you in the process of when you're applying, because a lot of people just don't know who to go to.
You can't go to the CAB anymore because they're being
No.
followed by the DWP, and I wouldn't trust them.
So firstly then, do we think we need to get active locally in terms of a local campaign? That is the first kind of thing around that, So how do we get that kind of out there? So I think, again, what was brought up was a lot of kind of misunderstandings about kind of what your rights are. And I think maybe addressing something like that, of actually getting some information out there firstly. And what other boroughs have done. So for example, Kilburn Unemployed Workers Group had a campaign where they just turned up at job centres every week and just hand out leaflets to people who were going into assessment and said, just in case anybody didn't tell you, these are your rights in this assessment, you know, and it literally was 5 or 6 bullet points on the side of a piece of paper, and they just handed that out and collected people's contact addresses.
That would be so good. I think that most people who go in really just think,
who don't have
any
clue of
rights.
what's
And that it's not a lot to ask people to do either.
Yeah.
You know, just like maybe at this time of year. But there's a place at Archway, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not wheelchair accessible.
The not Medina Road. Is it Medina Road? It is
Medina Road.
No, that used to be the Dole office years ago.
Oh, we did it. Oh.
No, somewhere around Archway.
Yeah, I know the one. It's up on the right hand side.
Elthorne.
Might be that, yeah. So that is something we can do. We start to get that information out there. One of the things we used to do for a little short while was we would have an information stall at the Angel Shopping Centre. Well, maybe it might be useful just to kind of move that to, you know, to one of the job centres. Maybe the big one in the Angel. Maybe one of the big one, the Angel, is far more accessible than any of the other ones in the borough.
Do you know the other thing? The nearest wheelchair accessible or the nearest assessment centre for people who are unable to climb stairs is in Marylebone. There isn't one in the borough. Right. And I think, and it's a significant distance to walk.
That Fox Court.
Huh?
Fox Court.
No, that's the appeal place. No, it's on
Islington Road.
Islington Road, but it's about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minute walk from the bus stop.
It is, yeah.
Right. So for people, this is for Islington residents who have very limited mobility and can't climb stairs. Listen Grove, which is an hour's journey by public transport and then a 20-minute walk,
Oh, God.
right, is a disgrace. And
Now, there was a thing within PIP that they can't make you travel more than 90 minutes from door to door. So that is impacted in the PIP
Yes.
contract. Yeah.
But it then means that for people who are unable to climb stairs,
Yeah.
there isn't somewhere within the distance.
They've opened a new place for the assessments.
So that
Well,
Sorry, no. They've opened a new building for the assessments. I can't remember where.
is it
He
Archwell?
said it was. I think they.
No,
I
there's
think I
one-
did hear something
There's
about.
one on the Cali Road, that's for the employment support allowance ones. And that's by the
Maybe that's
dump,
it.
by the new dump.
Yeah.
But the other one, which is I think the Dear Pip one, there isn't one in the
You
borough.
have to go to Smiley Way and do that one, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And you know the reason is, it's because they don't have the ground floor of the building. And they have a policy that they won't let people who can't walk downstairs in the fire go to the first floor. So rather than have proper health and safety in place, they just do a blanket ban that says unless you can run down the stairs in the event of a fire, you're not allowed in the building.
So in terms of how we responded, are we agreed that we should maybe have a look at producing some sort of small quick flyer with 5 or 6 points around kind of,
Bullet point.
you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is very useful
yeah.
for people, yeah.
What about kind of getting that out to people then? So should we look at maybe having a stall again at one of the job centres on one of the days, or are we thinking of something, you know, maybe a more central point like again the Angel Market or the Nags Head Market? Would we reach more people in the market or at the job centre? Kind of, what do people feel about
I think it might reach more people in a central point like Angel or
No, the
Mag.
Nags Head, if you look at people, if you go around the Angel, most of them appear to be quite healthy. If you go to the Nags Head, every other person's got a walking stick.
Yeah.
It's true what you say,
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think.
it's good, yeah.
So therefore, it's more likely that you're going to pick up people on benefit up there.
Yeah,
It's a poorer area, isn't it? Much poorer area.
yeah,
But it's like
Perhaps not so varied, you know, the people that will
yeah,
be interested. But
it kind of tapers off, the money tapers off from Highbury Corner to Archway. You know, the more north you go, the
You
better.
know that.
actually, I have noticed that so much, the contrast is.
yeah.
Mind Upper Street used to be a dump when I moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall with the fuck off to the yuppies.
So do we think that Nags Head, one of the days with
Yeah.
a new shiny leaflet that says these are your rights if you're going for CLIP, if you're going for universal credit, and there's a lot of stuff out there actually, we may need to not to put anything together. There's a lot of really useful kind of information out there already. One of the things we may be able to do is just kind of back that up with just some contact details locally
Yeah,
for the organisations that can support people, you know,
Yeah.
through that. So there are still some organisations in the borough that we can just kind of tack onto the back of that and make sure that it isn't some kind of vague,
yeah.
here are your rights, but actually it means something to them locally as well. So that's one thing we can do.
I think, yeah,
You know?
And the thing is, if we do it in the bit by Morrison's,
Yeah.
it's covered.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Sorry.
The arcade next
Yeah.
to the Purple King.
Just a couple of quick things.
Yeah.
Would there, I know it might not be kind of a particularly trusted source, but is there any precedent for like making it mandatory for any sort of assessment or job centre to give people or to tell people their rights.
No.
Like, I know it sounds unlikely, but I think it would be, you know, if people need to know what their rights are before they kind of go into an assessment, I think like there could be a way of like legally challenging that potentially.
Yeah.
And I also think, in addition to the kind of street stall stuff, creating a video that could be, you know, completely accessible and better for people that, you know, find it challenging to read large bodies of text could also be like a useful resource to make people aware of their rights before they kind of get reassessed.
If you could do something kind of simple like that, because that is simple, you could then tweet it, couldn't you?
I'll put it on.
I'm not really a
YouTube.
tweety person, but or put it on Facebook
YouTube, don't it? It's not too difficult to
and stuff.
start using.
So there's two things we could do, Ash, around, particularly around the rights. So there is a local network of job centre and a couple of the employment charities, and I believe one or two of the advice agencies. And I've seen a couple of the emails, but I just can't remember exactly who's on it.
Yeah.
But one of those things we could inquire at them on kind of what at the minute what they're doing to inform people of their rights when they come for an assessment, and kind of what they would agree to do locally, what they have the power to do. So we can contact them. The other thing is to PCS. So we do have some good contacts within the PCS kind of nationally, and we have found that actually, if you have a good PCS officer within a job centre, that you can get a lot more done with particular job centres with good PCS officers.
What does PCS stand for?
So PCS is the Public Commercial Services Union.
Okay.
So it's the Mark Sirocco Union. So they generally tend to be quite active inside job centres as well, and quite good. Now, in fairness, the majority of that is protecting their workers and kind of, is more about the workers' right, but it also, they do nod to claimant rights, and they're far softer on it, and most disabled people will tell you that it's not really that easy to tell a PCS job centre worker from a non-PCS job centre worker that actually they're very much cut from the same cloth. But it is one of those kind of angles that it's worth kind of seeing if there is anybody locally who is active and who is on site. And even if you can get one job centre to start rolling out that kind of, here's what your rights are going in here, and you can kind of work with that. And if you can get a foothold, then you can start to maybe see how you can kind of spread it. So the PCS would be another one that kind of, and I can contact them to see who's organising locally on their behalf, and just kind of see if there's a way of tying in with them. Because actually, they do have some kind of claimant support activities and stuff like that, and they spend a lot of time trying to find ways. The really good PCS people, particularly on the ground, try to find a lot of ways of kind of supporting claimants in any way that they can, and that would be a kind of page one kind of thing that they could do.
Maybe we could have it in the council magazine.
In
the council magazine.
Yeah.
Have half a page.
Yeah.
And maybe a Tribune would give us a half a page free as well. Put the leaflet in for a few weeks.
Yeah,
I would wonder if approaching Islington Council about putting a section on their website about local services for PIP and ESA would be because people use the council website. I mean, if you can't impose it on the DWP, the council are more likely to help in that small way, but I don't believe there's a PIP section on Islington Council website or ESA. So
one of the questions I put on this was, so we've kind of talked about how we capture, as you're saying, about maybe a video, how we kind of get some information out, we can go to stalls, we can kind of try and circulate that same kind of information through the council, through the papers, wherever we can. One of the things is that we're kind of falling down on, I think, is really pushing back on some of the kind of psychological stuff and kind of creating spaces where people feel a little bit freed up from that pressure. Because that is as destroying as kind of anything else. So I'm kind of open to ideas about that. I know that, other things people have done is phone support groups, phone trees, so that when people are coming up for an assessment, they get 2 or 3 people's numbers that they can kind of talk to and pick their brains and just kind of lean on who've been through that kind of thing before. So those are just kind of simple ideas that, just kind of take the pressure off. Is there any kind of anything else that people have heard of?
There's that Facebook Don't Go Alone Facebook page.
Yeah.
Where people say, just had the letter, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And some of the advice is pretty rubbish, but there's a core group of people who put really useful stuff and they read it and then they say, do this and do that.
Yeah.
And I also wonder if maybe locally, perhaps from the stall, you'll say to people, I don't know, come for a cup of tea on the Tuesday or on the sort of X of the month here. So that you build a small group of people who are just coming together to support themselves or other people. Because actually it's people who are in trouble who want to be there.
So we can do that. We can maybe offer a day every couple of weeks here at the office where we can open up for a couple of hours and just say, look, there's a kettle there, there's a couch there, come and chat about stuff and kind of we have a bit of information if you have any questions, but we start from that. So that's another thing we can do. Gareth, you're going to say something?
I'm going to interject. Sorry, I need to head off now to another meeting. Thank you so much for letting me stay. And when you do your stall, please let me know and love to come along and take a photo and maybe advertise it that way as well. So,
lovely.
Yeah.
And you find out about half page for us for a few
I'll
weeks.
do my best.
Give her a star. Thank you very much. Nice
I'm
one.
sure Eric won't mind.
Yeah, I think Eric would be happy with that.
Yeah. But also, the other thing is on your listing.
Yeah.
One of the things is that it would be really nice if some of those things go on the listing.
Oh, the disability act.
Well, yeah, so that, for example, these 3, if they had been on the listing.
Yeah.
I sent them through and asked them to go in.
I didn't see them.
Sorry, I am not part of the listings.
No, but I do think, I've noticed, because I read the listing quite often, that actually there isn't that much. I mean, what you get in the papers, you get this really interesting thing that happened, but it wasn't in the listing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point actually. I'll relay that back.
I sent it to Ramsey. Is it Ramsey?
Oh, that's
that's the other shit.
That's okay.
That's why it's not in the listing.
No, I sent it to both of you, but that's the name that jumped out in my head.
That's the Gazette.
That's the Gazette.
But send it to me next time as well.
Okay, I'll
and then you got my card, and then I'll do my Is it live stream?
It is. I'm not sure how much of it will be audibly.
Yeah, no.
We need a microphone, I believe, but we'll find out.
Yeah. No, of course. I might be in touch about your tape recorder as well.
Yeah, no problem.
10 to
Carry on, sorry.
10 to 8, sorry.
So we've had a couple of really practical ideas.
The
The stalls and the video. And I think you should spend the next kind of 20 minutes talking about one and 20 minutes talking about the other, about how we can make both of those things happen. Because we can't tackle everything. If we come up with a couple of really good
See you guys later.
and we can take that forward. So if we say spend the next 20 minutes kind of thinking about where we want to go first, let's get the stall out of the way first. Then we'll concentrate on the video, we'll have a bit more time. So at the minute we have a table somewhere. We have a couple of banners. We have an Islington DPAC banner and a DAI banner. We have some old leaflets around welfare reform that are still pretty relevant because they were about kind of impacts and cuts rather than individual kind of years. We have some merchandise from Deepak in a bag somewhere, so mugs, cups, key rings.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Because firstly, there isn't enough room inside the place.
Morrison.
Where Morrison's is for something that large. But also you have to get the agreement from the woman who is the,
She was good with us the last time.
yeah.
They're just details.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah. No, she was very good with us the last time.
you only need a little round table. That's
Yeah.
about all the space that there is in there.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it. So, and I think that we should just have something really simple that has 6 kind of bullet points on.
Yeah.
On one side.
Yeah.
So, don't go alone, these are your rights, whatever. And then on the other side, these are the phone numbers, and the largest phone number says disability action in Islington. And that's almost because, when we're in Manchester, people's handing out this really good leaflet.
Yeah.
Trouble is, you need a week to read it.
Yeah. No, I am of the school of less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Bullet point.
Yeah. So I will contact, and I cannot remember her name, but her name is in my email book somewhere because we did have permission to use the Angel shopping centre at one point.
no, that's Christine Lovett.
That's Christine.
No, different. Christine Lovett's great.
Yeah.
Whoever it is in the
Yeah, I'll find whoever it is.
But we could link it if we did it before Christmas, before the 3rd.
Yeah.
We could actually have a 2-option thing. Come to the International Day.
Yeah.
And here's your rights thing. And that's probably enough. And also give us your name and address.
That's the key thing, is the sign-up sheet. So the next thing then is the date. Yeah, so I'll pull the Deepak stuff because actually I think we have done some quite useful fact sheets around universal credit. So I'll have a look at what's on there, tailor it to what we have here around kind of where people can get support. So here, IMAX team, and I'll find out the kind of other couple that are useful around that. So now we need to kind of set a date and yeah, that's the next thing. Who can do it and what date?
Depending on what's going on in my world, I can. I think we should do it mid-November. And the reason is that gives a time, but also a couple of weeks before the International Day, you've got something that's
It's not coming in.
Yeah.
Be implanted in their memory.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks later.
Although the problem is that the International Day thing is down at Old Street, which is rather a long way.
Well, I also think it'll give us a bit of time. So I can't do it on the 17th, but I can do the 23rd. Is the 23rd the following week or the 24th? One of them. I could do the following Saturday. So that would give us essentially
You
a
want to
month.
do Saturday? Why Saturday?
Well, sorry, it just kind of popped into my head. Is there another day that people kind of think that you would want to do?
Most of the people aren't working.
Okay. You wanted to do it another day?
So I was thinking midweek,
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
before
Be careful of football. Yeah, no, because honestly, because getting up and down Holloway, using the Nag's Head.
It's true.
But no, I was
Yeah.
thinking kind of finishing at 3 because there'll be,
Yeah,
because then it's school pickup time.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Do that.
So middle of the week, maybe Wednesday, 1 o'clock, something like that, 1 to
Yeah.
3, something like that, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the date we will be looking at then would be either the 14th or the 20th, is that right?
No.
21st?
Later better. I mean, nearer International Day.
Yeah, so the last week of February, I don't have my phone,
February.
or the last week in November, the last Wednesday in November is the second last and the last are the
I definitely can't do that.
21st and the 28th?
21st, yeah, and the 28th,
Yeah.
therefore.
Okay. So, 21st?
Yep. Of October.
Yeah, it's a month from tomorrow.
Hang on.
November.
November.
A month from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Appears to be free.
1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah?
This is
Okay.
VAI store.
And I will knock up or reproduce the thing, get out the banner. We will have a sign-up sheet. Is there anything else we need for that day? Mic and amp, maybe? Depending on kind of how busy we are.
No, because actually probably better to talk to people individually.
Yeah.
And anyway, you're completely incorrect. You can't hear what you're saying on the microphone.
Okay. So we can, what about the other stuff in terms of, will I grab hold of the Labour, the motion that's going through the Labour constituency parties around calling on the leadership to stop and scrap universal credit? And maybe we can circulate that in the local constituency groups as well and see if we can get the local parties to sign up to that.
Why don't we just, somebody in North go to Jeremy Corbyn's surgery?
Yeah.
And somebody in South go to Emily Thornberry. They are not unknown in the leadership of the Labour Party.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe we could go also with the thing about the fact that there is no accessible buildings in the borough.
Okay. So, who lives in the north?
Me.
You live in the north? You happy to go along to see Jeremy?
Yeah.
Would you like us to write a little script?
Well, I can, yeah, I know Jeremy. Let me know what you want to say. Yeah.
You would say, Ash?
No, saying how you doing? It's been a while, but yeah, no, I'm happy to go and see.
Yeah?
Yeah, we think.
I think like,
Yeah, we're kind of.
you know, I want to be a little bit better prepared.
Yes.
And know.
Yes, we need to have a bigger
one month of
conversation, I
time,
think,
so, yeah.
on an email thread maybe,
Alright,
in advance.
he's unlikely to do his own surgery at the moment.
Yeah.
But he might.
But I could also see what's like being passed in the local CLP, because there might have already been something that has sort of said something similar to something.
Well, Richard Riser is disability officer for Islington North, isn't he?
He is, yes.
He is.
So he's also in my ward, and has been trying to encourage me to stand as the disability officer in our ward, because he does it for the CLP. So yeah, I don't mind emailing him and, you know, seeing what's being passed.
Well, why don't you take a motion to your next ward meeting? It's the AGM.
AGM week, isn't it?
It
Next
is,
week?
yeah. It's the 7th of November,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll circulate the motion to everybody.
Actually, if it's anything like other years.
Yeah.
There'll be two parts to the
There are.
meeting.
There are. Yeah.
So we could just somebody could just put the motion in.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do that. I'll circulate to everybody. So we're going to do Labour motion, stall, there was something else.
Who's in town? Oh, you're on.
Yes, I'll go along to see Emily, no problem.
Yeah.
The other thing was, so we are having a thing on International Day, and I think we should kind of maybe someone from this group, or if we can bring in one of the other campaign groups, but kind of create some space, just a couple of speakers on that day, a couple of times, and making sure that while we have people in the room, that we are talking to people about things that we're doing, things that other groups are doing, ways that they can kind of get involved in the campaigns, that they can kind of influence Labour, all of those kinds of things. So I think we can create some space on International Day, on our event, to kind of get that message out there as well. So yeah, I think we kind of have 3 or 4 things there that will kind of move things on quite considerably over the next month. Ash, do you want to take us through what you're thinking around in terms of video?
I guess I need a little bit more of an understanding of my own rights and of kind of everyone else's rights when they go to assessments, and if there are kind of differences between ESA and HIP or universal credit, or the kind of number of different assessments you can go to. And then also what people don't know currently and what would be useful for them to know. And I would just imagine it could be fairly straightforward. It could just be you only talking sort of the camera with a couple of graphics interspersing the kind of, these are your 5 rights that you should know before going to universal credit assessment. And yeah, it would be no more than a couple of minutes. I think it would be useful to probably make it applicable wider than the Islington context, because then it could probably be useful to more people. But that's kind of as much of an idea as I have at the moment. I think there are some contacts that I have that could probably help with that, with the production of the video. And I think it would just be a case of, sitting down with someone in the know and getting them to sort of come up with a script that would have the kind of key messages and information that people would need. So I think I think if it's something that everyone agrees on, I'm happy to kind of take that forward and see what we come up with.
And also things like, the one from Tribune. There's no reason you couldn't embed the video in the Tribune page.
Well, if it's useful, we should be able to spread it on social media, and it does its own work. So, but having a 2-minute long video that's much more accessible than reading a leaflet, even if the leaflet only has 5 bullet points on. Dyslexic people who don't like reading in general, people who don't read anything except for the stuff on YouTube or on Instagram will be seeing the information, whereas people who are going to see it on the stall are very minimal. But it's just going to be people who shop at Morrison's. I think videos are probably a good way of putting out information regardless of the topic. Just that 2-minute short videos are very accessible to everyone.
I mean, it might already exist. I think that's the first thing to do, is to just. I imagine if people, like you said, from that, I can't remember the name of the Facebook group, but if there is sort of people already there giving good advice, there might be kind of places that people would want to kind of look for that information.
I think it's, I mean, I read it occasionally, it comes up on my thing, I'll give you the name.
So can I suggest, if we are endeavouring to create videos to provide information to people, that maybe we pool everyone's social media resources? So if you know about Don't Go Alone and some other people know about other groups that you're not aware of, and then maybe we can group a huge number of groups that people are using locally and where they find information. So we can tell people about social groups that exist.
The ones that are the least helpful are those groups that they put you on.
Igneous and all of them. What you mean, Igneous and all the people?
No, you suddenly find you're a member of some group or other.
Oh, on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I think there is a good one called 7up. Is it 7up? Or is it 4up?
7up.
I think it's but I'm pretty sure it's called 7up or 4up. I can't remember. But 7up I think is what it was. But it was it started as an anti-Antos page, but it was a really useful kind of information site then where advisors would leave kind of like little tips and stuff like that. People who've been through the yearly assessment would kind of come out and kind of tell people what was kind of coming after and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was called 7 Up. I don't know why.
Or maybe if people know, they could just sort of, I'll email any groups that I think are useful.
Yeah. What might be useful just in general as well is if we all kind of try and find out 1 or 2 things that advice agencies, activists, the kind of key people, you know, that are involved in this are kind of giving other people, you know, if there's one thing that they're telling everybody to take away with them. And if we can kind of build up that top tips for dealing with it kind of right across the board, then yeah, what's the first 2 or 3 steps that kind of you need to take and we need to take around the video as a group? So kind of what do you need to go away and do? What do we need to go away and do?
So I guess it would be understanding the differences between the different assessments and are your rights different depending on the kind of assessment that you have.
Yeah.
Are we making a video for your rights for all assessments or for universal credit or ESA or one something specific? And then once we've done that, I think it is a case of like writing a treatment. So that's both the kind of the script that would be either read out or as a kind of voiceover, and then what would be going on visually. And I think, like Gareth was saying, if there's sort of like other organisations or other DPOs around the country that have maybe been ahead of the curve because universal credit, for example, might have been rolled out there first.
Yeah.
They might know how to advocate for people's rights in a more kind of structured way. I'm sure. Yeah.
Maybe it would be better to have one for each if they're short.
Yeah.
And use the same format but slightly different information so that people don't, if people are migrating from GLA to PIP, they may not want to get scared stiff about migration from ESA to universal credit.
Yeah.
Because that's not like happening to them at the moment.
Yeah. I think it's probably from your experience, Andy, like you did when I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but when you came in and you asked, what support do you want? What do you know about already? And then, start from that position, filling in the kind of the gaps, because I think although a lot of kind of you've been dealing with a lot of this stuff for years, what to you is common sense might not be for everyone who's kind of only has to interact with the state on like a yearly basis or when their circumstances change. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it needs to be too complicated, but telling people their basic rights, I think is something everyone can kind of get behind. I would hope.
So, was there anything anybody else wanted to chip in before I kind of summarise and back over everything and brought us to the close?
There was one other thing that I was going to mention, which again I don't know too much about, but in reference to the second point that you briefly mentioned about the kind of the mental health kind of strain that going through assessments or benefit claims can put on you. I think social prescribing seems to be something that is going to be happening soon, and I think being able to make sure that whatever those services are or whatever those organisations offer is fully accessible to people that might be offered social prescribing as a way of improving things could be useful. So either working in partnership with those organisations or offering a distinct service that people could come to if they're disabled because they're under stress because of benefits or could be quite useful.
Well, some of the they've got this thing called choice and control, which is a 6-month pilot personal health budget, which is kind of very similar to social prescribing, which I'm on.
Yeah.
but it's only limited at the moment, and I think it's actually geared to people with mental health issues.
Yeah.
But then there's also the stuff down towards Old Street.
Yeah.
Which is not that.
I'm not saying anything at all.
Which seems to be about GPs working with GWP
Yeah.
people, which is different. And then there's also, like the ones about, I don't know, have 6 weeks at the gym, which is another kind. And the personal health budget one doesn't have anything, any links at all with the benefit people.
Yeah.
But it's only a pilot.
Yeah. So I guess while they're piloting new stuff, I think to make sure that it's fully accessible.
It's about I knew about it because I knew somebody who worked on it.
Yeah, I'm sort of.
But I think that if you go to your GP, I went to my GP, and I was trying to get my dad a personal health budget with his dementia, and each of the GPs said, "You know more about it than I do," but maybe my surgery.
Sure. What were you going to say?
Well, I don't want to take up your time. No, they're sort of trying to get me on this choice and control thing. But really, it's just giving you a bit of money for something that's good for your health, kind of thing. That's the idea.
Actually, the 10 weeks with the peer coach is worth more than the money.
You think so?
Well,
Yeah.
I was linked to somebody who suits me well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. They told me not to do that because they said you can't have the money until you finish that.
Yeah. No.
And I mean, I'm not so bothered about money, I want to sort
But
of,
the peer coach
but,
that I have kind of, I've found really useful. I mean, money's useful too, but actually, the peer coach bit, because the person is a peer, they've been through lots of shit too.
So I guess the couple of things that I heard there are like, do GPs know about the kind of options that are available?
No.
And if not, why not? Are the kind of services like, as good as they are, might not be like the, giving someone a gym membership or a gym trial or whatever. Are those gyms set up to be accessible?
No, that's why I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and then linked to what you were saying, it's like it doesn't sound like you have a choice if you're being told what you can do. Like it's so
no,
again, it's like, is there another bit of information about rights that would need to go into every GP surgery, and have a pamphlet about that? I don't know.
But you do have a choice. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You work with the peer coach to work out what works for you.
Yeah.
And that's different from the social prescribing where they give you 10 weeks at better.
Right.
And the thing about that is that's great for people who have cardiovascular problems. But I've never managed to do enough exercise to get out of breath. so that isn't any good for me.
Yeah.
But it will be for other people.
it's actually run by Age UK. I mean,
no, it's not.
Doctors don't really know.
No, I'll tell you after.
It's not.
No, it's not run by.
Okay.
But I'll tell you after.
It's the council, isn't it?
No, it's a joint project between the council and the clinical commissioning group.
Oh, yeah,
GPs.
that's it. Yeah.
And the Age UK are the assessors. No, they're not the assessors.
Monitors.
No, they're the ones who work with you. After you've worked out with your peer coach what you want to do, you then have Age UK who have the contract, the navigators, right? Because they can't navigate themselves outside of the paper bag. But your peer coach will be able to help you to work out what it is that would work for you. And then what the navigators are supposed to do is, like, once you've worked out something, they're then supposed to go and find it.
Yeah.
But it's probably better if you find
You
it
have
yourself.
to find it yourself, really.
No, well, they'll help you. Right.
Well, what they give you is £500.
No, it depends on how many boxes you tick.
Oh,
Right. And the thing is, somebody needs to work out how to tick as many boxes as possible, because the more you tick, the more money you get.
because it used to be £2,000, hadn't it? A few years ago, but I didn't, wasn't really told about it. Yes, it
I didn't know
used to
about
be
the current one.
now it's 500, but they're saying, oh, it's a brand new thing and it's absolutely wonderful. It's so generous. It's a quarter of what people had before, It's the way they put things across,
I've got more than that.
That you can get more, I heard from someone, but not, obviously not from Age UK or the Christian people.
Was there a particular action you wanted to take, Ash, around that, or more information to kind of find out what's going on there, or what?
Yeah, so I guess it was more the like if GPs are kind of aware of people who are having mental health difficulties because of benefit-related issues, they should all, within the borough, know that they could refer them here, I would hope.
Yeah.
And if there's, so I think, I don't know if we've got a list of all the GPs in the borough, but I think that could be a good place to start, trying to contact them, reach out to them. And then, and then I think, I don't know enough about social prescribing to really, but it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done with it.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be, something that we kind of talk about in another meeting.
Okay. So what we can do then, it does open a couple of things. So first thing is we can, as you said, kind of start looking at developing that link between us and kind of the GPs who are involved in this, and kind of pushing that on and see what work there is to be done there. I do know a couple of people who kind of have far more in-depth knowledge about what's going on with GPs and the various options around kind of how they can support people now. So what we could do is, and we talked earlier about kind of a couple of things. So we talked about having an open door once a month or once every couple of weeks here. Well, maybe we could centre that round so I can get someone in from the Mental Health Resistance Network who have a lot of experience with dealing with that, who know a lot of kind of what's going on the ground, and maybe centering it around that. So getting one of those guys to come in, maybe do a quick kind of update for people for 20 minutes, and then kind of an hour just sitting around afterwards, kind of chatting and talking stuff through with people. How do people kind of think maybe that might be a useful place to start with that? Yeah.
I think anything that gets more people in the building who want to do something, rather than you want to give something rather than just take something.
So I'll look for a date between now and Christmas.
Yeah.
I think we should move kind of between now and Christmas where we can start. I can get maybe Denise in to kind of give a little talk and talk people through kind of what their GPs are offering them and what the best options are to take. Because like you said, Sandy, there is still some overhang from the DWP stuff, from the kind of work choice stuff and the igneous stuff, and then there is some better things that are being driven by the council and the CCG and stuff like that. So there is a kind of a busy picture kind of going on. So having someone to kind of unpick that for us. So I'll find a date for that. We've agreed the 21st of November at Nag's Head, 1 to 3 o'clock to do a stall. And I'll work with getting the information to go on the leaflet and contacting the Nag's Head to make sure that we are welcomed with a red carpet and hot coffee.
Or just the space and not thrown out.
Not-
actually,
well,
it's just-
Yes, not being thrown out is definitely a good starting point. We should base everything on the premise that we are not going to be thrown out.
just because outside is.
So then, Ash, you'll go in maybe and see if there's kind of the logistical side of making and producing a video, and I'll try and find some content in terms of whether or not we're making 3 separate videos or 1 video, finding out what exactly are the difference between people's rights on different kind of claims, and then whether or not we need to make an overarching one or separate videos. We will I'll circulate the Labour Party motion, which people can start to push for the AGMs next week. There is a kind of wider trade going on with Hackney, with Muswell Hill, and with a Tottenham kind of Labour group. So if any Labour members want to kind of get in on that conversation, we can start to look at how we can maybe start building a North London block around kind of this stuff, particularly around universal credit and PIP. One of the things that has been in my head actually that I didn't say, in terms of, and also we will start to maybe look at trying to build up some means of people supporting each other through assessments. So whether that's a phone call, a phone tree, or a kind of email thread, or just some means of kind of people touching in beforehand, or, letting the pressure off afterwards and screaming and venting, whatever it is. Just, we'll explore some way of kind of building up a network of people to kind of do that. And Don't Go Alone might be the best place to kind of start with that and kind of information and models they have on there.
Do you know, I think the thing about having somebody go with you, is it makes you feel a bit more secure. While you're sort of almost literally being denuded. But also, I think they're more careful. When they're doing the assessment, if there's another person, and do you know that it doesn't even need to be somebody who knows the hell's going on. So if you just sit, if you just go in
to witness it,
They might not bully you so much, they might not put you down so much in front of someone else.
One of the things was, I was speaking to someone at Momentum last week who organises in London, and they were saying there's a lot of people that are at a loss. They want to kind of support people about how they can kind of support people through all of these processes, but they only have kind of a couple of hours a month. And I was thinking, well, if everybody had a couple of hours a month was going on an assessment, then that would be ideal. So, there may be something in that, in actually saying to someone like Momentum, we have that London-wide catchment, if we can get 100 people willing to donate 2 hours a month, then we can support 100 people across London in true assessments per month.
Maybe through a WhatsApp.
Yeah, so something like that, and there would be a little bit of prep for the people who are going to support. We would need a kind of little bit of kind of grounding with them, some advocacy kind of input at the beginning. But I do think there is something there to kind of build on with those bigger networks who are full of people with good intentions, very little capacity. But actually, in this case, going along to someone's assessment is just an ideal thing. 2-3 hours once a month, bang. Do you know what I mean? And that's quite simple. And if you're on a rotating kind of list of as people come up, then you kind of, then you're only going to do it once every 100 times. So it's not a huge ask. Do you know what I mean? So, there might be something around that as well.
Likewise, if there's kind of golden rules, just bullet point, simple, clear points for what they need to.
This is how you advocate. These are the 6 things you need to look out for.
Don't touch with the barge pole. This is what you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's quite a lot. It's not bad. So,
and they should wear a big badge. I am not the partner. Remember?
Yes, I do.
Andy and I had to. They kept, and I had to say, no, he's my advocate. And that's why I didn't get my PIP.
Yes, Mr. Marks.
I got all that. Do I have your email address?
No,
Yeah, then you take your own house. Was there anything else?
Yes, no. If you can,
We do have a sign-in sheet there. Yeah. But everybody else is a hand.
Yeah.
Was there anything else before we closed up? So 21st is the next key date, and the date for an open house and getting MHRN in, and the next kind of active thing is getting stuff out for next Wednesday's AGMs. And then we'll follow up on everything on the email thread after that.
I did look up 7 Up whilst we were there, and it said it was a youth initiative in Manchester for getting people involved in activities and getting out. It didn't mention it being a campaign.
Okay, I'll find out the name for that then. Do you know who told me about? Do you know Chris, who was at Birmingham, the guy with the walking stick and the beard? He was with us at Birmingham few weeks ago. But he was a member back in the day, and he switched me onto it. And I'll ask Chris.
a beard and a walking stick.
It's half the length. Yeah, I know. It's pretty much every man that kind of goes out and gets the
Yeah, it's so long.
Yeah, in fairness. Right, we're done. That's it, I think. I need nicotine before my one working lung collapses.
Could I just